Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Fire Up Michigan. My name is Scott Morganroth, Motor City Mad Mouth, and what a crew I have tonight. I have George Eichhorn. Welcome back, George.
Hi, Scott. Hi, everybody.
I'm doing all right. Madman Mancini's back.
Yeah.
And our special guest tonight is John Thiede. And John, you know what? It's has been a friend of mine for a long while through Detroit sports media, but more importantly, what you've done throughout your career, both as a firefighter as well as a guy in sports media, to me is phenomenal. And I'm going to get exactly to it. Just to give everybody an overview, okay, about John Thiede, our special guest tonight. John Thiede is a rookie firefighter, okay? Saved a young lady by the name of Cecelia Cichan. At that time, she was 4 years old. She was sole survivor in a plane crash that took place on August 16th, 1987 at 8:46 p.m. So in August will mark the 35 years ago that took place. There are 156 people that unfortunately died, but amongst those people were Cecilia's mother, father, brother. Took place at Metro Airport. The flight was supposed to leave from Phoenix, Detroit to Phoenix, and moments later it unfortunately crashed. And it actually crashed on Middle Belt Road and I-94. I know there's a memorial there because I drive by it a lot because I'm inspired, of what took place over there. So, John, why don't you talk about what you went through during those horrific moments?
Well, like I said, you said I was a rookie fireman back then in 87. I got hired in 86. And so working in Romulus, we have Detroit Metro Airport, which was probably the 8th or 9th busiest airport at the time. We were working that night and we got a call for an explosion at Wickham Middle Belt Road. And by the time, power died at the firehouse, we pulled out on the Middle Belt Road and our dispatcher came back and said there was an explosion. And they think it was a small plane down. And we had these large fuel tankers at the corner, and that's what we thought it was. And as we pulled on the Middle Belt Road, our dispatcher told us that it was a plane wreck. So we went basically half a mile and we hit the first part of the wreckage, which was just north of I-94 on Middle Belt, which we saw the cockpit. And the guy I was with, Dan Kish, and another guy, we could see the west on the cockpit. And so right there, we knew it was a large, passenger plane. And then, we just got off the truck and we grabbed 2 hose lines. The engineer parked in a southbound lane of Middle Belt Road. There was a little bit of clear path, and we actually parked in front of a passenger who was still strapped in a chair. That was like the first piece of wreckage we came to. And then the cockpit would have been to our left on the northbound side of Middle Belt. So we pulled our hose lines off, and for some reason, they never charged my hose line. So I set it down, and I went with the other guy, Dan Kish, and we climbed into the northbound side of Middle Belt Road, which was where the cockpit was at. And after about, 20, 30 seconds, my partner, Dan, he asked me if I heard anything, and I said no. And he thought he heard what was that of a little girl crying, and I still didn't hear it. So then Dan started to walk southbound, and I walked northbound, and I was checking people, and I actually started to hear it myself. And I saw a seat that was laying upside down, and I remember Wayne County Sheriff was standing out on the street, and I asked him for a flashlight, and I ran back out and got it and came back in, and I was looking at the flashlight because the only light I had was from the flames. That was little spot fires and stuff. And so I was moving some debris, and then I moved a chair that was laying upside down. I moved the chair to my right. I looked at the passenger that was underneath the chair, and it was a lady, and she had not survived. And I heard the noise again. And when I looked to my right, I could see an arm coming out of the chair, which I picked up because she only weighed like 35 pounds. She was like 4 years old. And, I hurry up and I moved the chair, and I saw she was still strapped in they had her on, remember the old days when if you had little kids, you remember those little restaurant seats like we used to ride in the car, car seats were just like a piece of plastic. And that's what she was in. And her parents put her in that and then put her in the plane chair. So she was in that little bucket, that little seat you would get in a booster chair. And then she was in a seat. So I cut the seat off her, and I caught another guy in, Roy, who was our engineer, and he was like our senior guy. And so we just carried her a few feet, and then he sent me down for some equipment, and we started working on her. And that was kind of it right there. It's like just pretty quick, and it's funny because, once we cut her dress off and we assessed her injuries, loaded her up on the shortboard, which we still have here in the firehouse where I'm at tonight. So after she came back from Mott's Children's Hospital, the fire chief laminated the board with a picture on it. So that's in our entryway here at the firehouse headquarters. we put her in the ambulance, and I saw Dan probably about 2.5 hours later on that night when we split up. He walked southbound in the whole wreck. He probably walked a mile, and then I saw him about 2.5 hours later on the scene and said, "Hey, you heard that girl? That was a girl moaning, And so he never really got to see her until like 3 days later at the hospital when they found out who she was. But it was just so quick, it just happened. And, when you look back at it, I'm thinking, what? And then worked on this lady underneath. And then I saw the arm coming out, because I thought it was actually the person. Wow.
Yeah, it's unbelievable stuff, too. It really is, John, when you talk about a lot of it, especially when you consider the fact that there were 156 passengers over there. And not only that, amongst those people that died, John, you have the mother, the father, and the brother as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
How surreal was it knowing, and I'll get to you in a moment, Mark, okay, that you had 3 family members dying, and the fact that little Cecelia was there, let alone the fact that, as I just mentioned moments ago, you had 6 crew members, 149 passengers. That to me is just unbelievable how she's the one of a 4 family that survived the whole thing.
Right. Oh, yeah. I mean, she lost everybody. Obviously, she grew up with her aunt and uncle, which was her godparents. So, lived a great, life from there. But, yeah, lost her immediate family, as is everybody did, which is so unique about that wreck is every year they come back to the crash site and they put a memorial up on the hill. And I've been on that memorial every year. I go with the families and that. And those family members, obviously, 35 years, a lot of the original family members have passed away, the ones that I was a rookie fireman. And what's so unique is they took me in, and I see these people a couple times a year, maybe, but I see them at that memorial, and it's strange to say, because I look forward to it, because it's like a second family to me. All those family members, they took me right in, and like, after I testified at the FAA stuff, they asked me questions, and, none of them, wanted to say, how come you found her and not my loved one? Because it was just, who knows why she survived, just the luck of whatever, if there's luck or a God or whatever you want to call it. But, everybody probably in something like that, when that plane crashed and rolled over, a lot of those people probably were unconscious before they even hit the ground because of the G forces and being spun around in the plane because it landed upside down. But I look so forward every year to see those family members, and they lost everybody. They lost, like almost like Cecilia's case, a brother and a sister-in-law and a baby was wiped out. And so it was unique how all those people came together and they started that, the Spirit Lives On group. And every year, the crowds get less and less and less because, they try to pass on to the people who weren't even born in those families yet, and they come back and carry it on. So I'm amazed that probably 35 years, it'll be a huge memorial, I think, this year.
So, Mark, did you have a quick question before I go ahead?
Yeah, I got a 2-part question, John. And the first one is, 35 years later, do you keep in touch with Cecelia, 1? And number 2, boy, I'll tell you, you guys are underpaid as far as doctors and nurses and everything. You got to have a strong heart and everything, because when you see a plane crash like that, how do you secure an area that fast with all bodies thrown all over and everything? That's got to be tough, and you got to have a strong stomach too.
Yeah. To answer the question, in fact, in 2006, I went to her wedding down in Alabama. So she reached out to me when she got older, and just reached out, and we talked, and I went to her wedding, and we talked. God, I mean, I just talked to her yesterday on Father's Day. So basically, in fact, she came into town a few years back, and we had lunch and went to a Tiger game. So it was actually pretty cool. We're at Comerica Park, and she's a big Phillies fan because they live inside like Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. So they're big Eagles and big Philadelphia. Her husband is an Alabama nut. They met in college down in Alabama. So they're big college on Alabama. But yeah, we talk all the time. We were in a couple of documentaries together, but it's more like a brother-sister, I think, relationship. She had her time when she asked me about the crash and everything. And, she picked my brain on everything, and that was it, and then she really don't talk about it now, but she's a bit advocate of safety in the air. And the second part of that, back then, like now we have so much incident command, and back then that was more of a professional golfers. We had guys coming up from Toledo and Monroe, and there's nothing they could do. And I would probably give credit to the Wayne County sheriffs and the airport police back then for securing that scene, for we could do our job, and anybody else that came in. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there was always reports of people looting and stuff. I never saw none of that. But yeah, it was a widespread plane wreck. I mean, if you could, I couldn't imagine, I imagine what people in wars went through when they see something like that, because, we couldn't even walk, we'd take a step and we'd have to put like something, a little piece of body bag over a body part. But it was so surreal to see like what the effects of a human body look like. But you see a can of soda that was hit from the galley and it was untouched, or a tennis racket that was on the plane, or somebody's camera that was untouched, and it went through this whole disaster, but it is just weird how some things you couldn't recognize. And like I said, it affected some guys because, once again, I go back to my captain and lieutenant at the time who trained me, because, when we got on, if there was scenes that were chaotic, they made you get in there. My first plane accident was an air link that crashed, and my captain, we had 9 people die. It was a really small commuter plane. We were backing up Metro Airport firefighters, and he said, "Hey, I got some new guys. Can they go in there and get some of the deceased out?" And it's like, I wanted nothing to do with that, and I had to crawl in there upside down and do these buckles, and these people fall on you into bags. And it was like, oh my God, I hated this guy. But then 255 came, I knew why he did it, and as a captain now, I train guys the same way, and if it wouldn't have been for those 2 guys, I probably would never made it through this career, and one of them, my lieutenant at the time, who's now one of our battalion chiefs, to be retiring. So it's me and him and a fire prevention chief. That's the only guys left. Everybody on my crew wasn't even born back then. I think all my crew's 24, 22. So they don't even know what that stuff is, what happened down there. They know there's 156 pine trees on Middle Belt Road for some reason. So
John, let me ask you a couple of questions. Mark touched on it, and then I want to go over it again. But before I do that, folks, once again, this is Fire Up Michigan. My name is Scott Morgan, Roth Motor City Manmouth. That's the crew we have tonight. But just to let everybody know, okay, that you can find the show on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. And you can also, the audio portion of the show can be heard on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Apple, Google, Spotify as well, wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can locate us at Twitter at Tribune South. So I just wanted to go ahead and go over that. So, all right. So Mark asked some interesting questions. So you said you attended Cecelia's wedding in 2006. Obviously, they must have gave you red carpet treatment, knowing that without you, you're not in Alabama at this wedding. What was the reception like when you were in Alabama at her wedding?
Actually, it was actually not really a red carpet treatment. It was more of a secret because it was so guarded. They didn't want to, the press was trying to find out about it and things like that. So only Cecelia and I think her bridesmaid and husband knew I was coming. And and mind you, I only saw Cecelia 3 days after at the hospital. And then I saw her like 2 days before she went home, and she was 4 years old. And throughout the years, we would get pictures of her through her grandma and grandpa. And so, her aunt and uncle would send pictures, and her grandma and grandpa, and that's all I knew of her, and then when she reached out to me, then I would talk to her. But she invited me to the wedding, and it was funny because it was the reception was at a hotel, but we had to go to a church, so I stayed at the same hotel where the reception was at. And so I think I took a taxi cab to the wedding, and they had security because they didn't want the press to come in. So I had to, I was on the list. But then on the way back to the hotel, Cecelia, like when I first seen her coming down the aisle, I just kind of lost it because I never seen her as an adult. I didn't get to see her prior to the wedding. I seen her coming down in her dress. And then I seen her when she came out after they got married. They came out, I saw her in the lobby, and she goes, "Hey, why don't you ride back to the hotel with my uncles and stuff like that?" I says, "Okay, what do I say?" So on the way back, they kept saying, "Well, how do you know Cecelia?" And I said, "Well, I've known her like back then, 2006, 20 some years ago when she was little." And the way it came out, and they were just like, I was just probably being so strange, And so when they got back to the hotel, they were saying like, who's this guy, Cecelia? Is this guy like a press or is he media? Did he sneak into the wedding? And then it kind of got out that I was there. Her godmother came up to me and recognized me. And then everyone kind of knew. So then after that, we had a dance, which was pretty, neat. I got a picture of that, me and her dancing, which I probably got on my phone here. But after that, then it was all fun and everybody came up to me and stuff like that. And her husband's like, he's the same way. Like, they have a kid now. They have a young 10-year-old and, he always says, hey, if it wasn't for you, I probably wouldn't even have this family. So really, she's probably the real hero. She's the one that survived until we got there. I mean, we were just doing our job really. So
what she was really trying to do basically was avoid a media circus of sorts by just kind of keeping it low key is what she was doing.
She still does. She won't come to the memorial on that night because she don't want it to take away from the other families. She knows if she comes on that night, it'll be a media frenzy because they'll want to see her, and she don't want to take it away from the other 156 people who lost people on there. She wants them to focus on those people who lost people too. So, if she's visited, she's just done it on her own. So she wants to focus to stay on everybody on that flight, not her. So she won't, they probably won't even recognize her, I'd imagine, but so she's pushing like 40. So,
Wow. So let me ask you a brief question here, because I have a couple other things I want to get to. What type of questions has she asked you about the crash at all?
Whatever she could remember, and then she would just ask me like the condition that if I knew where her parents were at, because there was always a rumor that her parents, shielded her. But her mom and her dad was actually, what's weird is they were in the front of the plane, and her dad was found at the beginning of the wreckage, like 3/4 of a mile back, and her brother and mom was found probably about 10, 15 feet from her. So I don't believe anybody shielded her. She just happened to land on a lady that I'll remember the lady's name was Phyllis Ziegler from Arizona. So that was the lady that was under her, that the chair was on top of. So, I don't know how those stories got out. But she just, I told her, and I do that with all the families. All the families, they want to know. I tell them, they have that curiosity, and I don't want them to lie. And, because you always heard stories of, people were breaking windows out of the plane, and nobody was doing that. You can't break out. It took me probably 20 swings with an axe to break a window of a plane. So, people weren't busting windows to jump out of an airplane. And so, all those bystanders had stories. So, just like Cecelia, I think she probably asked, did I see her parents, which I wouldn't even known back then. I went by the charts, after they investigated everything. She asked the condition of her and, things like that.
So more or less, you're just trying to fill in the blanks, basically, is what you're doing. So, all right. So as we move on a little bit here, and I only have two more questions pertaining to this. I want to talk a little Detroit Tigers stuff as well. So, she was involved with a documentary called Soul Survivor, obviously.
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about that. They talk about the crash per se. Do you know much about the Soul Survivor? And
I was in it, yeah.
You were in it. So
I was in it too, yep. The Soul Survivor, Kay Dickens was the director, and it was in the history of aviation, whatever they consider a commercial airliner, I think like 25 people or more, there's only been 9 instances where there's been one survivor. Like a private plane may go up with 4 people and one person could survive, but they don't consider that a commercial airliner. So in the history of aviation, there's only been 9 wrecks where one person has survived. And it focused around a gentleman named George Lamson, who him and his dad was coming back, I believe, from the Super Bowl back in the late 80s or early 90s, and the plane crashed outside Reno. And he actually jumped from the bottom of the airplane door when it crashed on the ground. And he was a sole survivor. There's another one from Kentucky where the co-pilot lived and like 30 people died when they took off on the wrong runway. And another one about France. So it involved 9 people, and Cecelia was one of them. And so the unique thing about that also is out of those, a lot of those people, like the one lady crashed in the jungle, so she had to walk out like 5 days. Another girl floated on the ocean for a couple of days on wreckage and was picked up by a freighter. So probably about 4 or 5 of those were only found by probably first responders. So, I look at my career, I'm thinking, God, I don't know if it's not really special, but it's like when you think of only one person being rescued, then there's probably only 5 people in the whole entire history of aviation where one person has survived, and a first responder pulled him out or something like that is weird. But it was a documentary on that, and they actually showed her. That was probably the first time they showed her, and then I had an interview on there too, and then she talks about me also on there too. So,
right. So it's a very surreal experience, is what you're telling me, knowing that this is made of a crash, that she was the sole survivor. Is that correct?
Yeah, the sole survivor of the airliner, and it revolved around all those people and their stories now. Yeah.
Okay, Mark, do you have a question for?
Yeah, I've never been a big fan of flying myself. I kind of felt like the old John Madden there that always liked to take buses to places. But it's another 2-part question, real quick. And if George has a question and all the, Scott. But is there a safe way in this thing when a plane comes down, in your mind and your expertise and knowledge, seeing this, whether it's in the water, whether it's on the field? And the second thing is, with the years of being a fireman, I'm sure there's a lot of Cecelia types you've run into, as far as you're looked at as almost like a hero, and probably set on the same bar as maybe the Detroit Tigers in some ways.
When it first happened, probably the first few years after, I think every run I went on, people say, hey, do you know that guy who pulled the girl out of the plane wreck? But now I think, it's 35 years, if someone brings up the crash, the guy say, oh yeah, that was the dude, he was on there. In fact, we just had a rookie policeman the other day, and I guess in their police academy class, the story was brought up. And when I was on the call, the older cop said, yeah, that's the guy right there, like that. And I says, what guy? And he says, yeah, in our police academy class, we found out about the plane wreck here and how Fireman Romulus found her. And, I didn't know if you still worked there. And I asked the cop, and he said, yeah, that's him right there, the captain. So, once in a while we get that. Sometimes, just people pop in and they're curious too. They've heard about the story, and then they come in and look at the board. Probably every 5 years, we get on the anniversary, the news pops in, and, Hank Winchester, Ron Savage used to come in all the time and talk to me. Hank Winchester usually does the interview, CNN, stuff like that. So, and what was the first part? I forgot.
The first part is about the plane crash. Is there a safe way? I mean, when you see these things coming down, I'd probably try to jump. I mean, you look at the water.
I don't know. I think, I think on most plane wrecks, you probably, what's so curious is, like, we back up, Metro Airport fire guys, they have an excellent fire department. So on occasion, every week, we're backing them up on what they call alert twos, where a pilot has smoke in a cockpit, or he has lights coming on of no landing gear, or he has no hydraulic lights, and they want the aircraft on the runway, the fire trucks, so they land 99.9% with no incident. It's either a faulty light for the landing gear, or, some kind of smoke in the cockpit. That's fine, but they can make it to the runway. And it scares you because you don't know if they even tell the passengers what's going on. The passengers land, and you see 6 fire trucks, following the plane, and you're wondering what's going on. But I don't know. I think it's probably half the time they don't even tell you what's going on, or I couldn't even imagine being in that situation if a plane's just, falling like that. There's probably no safe place to be except listen to what the flight crew tells you. They train for it, and, they say most planes crash on landing or takeoff anyway. So there's probably no time to, I don't know. It's just, I think it's with anything, you walk down the street, get hit by a car. It's just fate, whatever. If it's your time to go, that's how I look at it.
That's
I love to fly.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, John, that's the thing that struck me most, is it happened so fast.
Yeah.
It was taking off from a major airport so fast. A lot of people don't know this, but it was right on the fringe of where the runway ends, and the flight is gaining altitude and speed. Yeah. And that's what made it so the people didn't have a chance.
Yeah, and it was pilot error, and that's the sad thing, is just something these guys didn't want to stay here. It was raining. They already flew. That plane made 5 stops already, and they were going to go to Phoenix and then finally end at John Wayne Airport in California. And it's like nobody gets on. The pilots don't get on a plane wanting to die. They just, missed a vital thing because they had idle chit chat in the cockpit about the, the weather, and they didn't want to leave, and they forgot to do a main thing of setting the flaps, and And, you hear that going down the runway. And like George said, they should have already been 300 feet up in the air. And why they didn't recognize that to abort the takeoff and say, hey, we're really using this whole runway when we should already be 300 feet up in the air. But, most accidents are like that. Somehow the pilots get fixed on something. And it's just like us in cars, or, people text, or people do something silly and they lose their life, and flying, more people probably die on the roads than they do on planes. It's just one big number at one time. Cecelia loves to fly. It's funny that they fly everywhere. They love to travel, which is weird, but she loves to get on those planes and go.
All right. So one more question pertaining to the subject, then I want to go into the sports media and Tigers just for like 10, 12 minutes or so. So tell me, to this day, do you get many interview requests? Because we all know how prominent Google is, where, anybody that looks at aviation knows it's one of the deadliest flights ever in American history, I know. But we'll just talk about you and getting interview requests, knowing full well, and whether it's 35 years, 20, 25, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I just had I think last year I did an interview request out of Denmark, reporter, and that was weird because she didn't speak English, so I had to answer the questions, and then she put it into a form. I get a lot of people, I think, that, like George said, and I think you mentioned Soul Survivor, but the History Channel and Smithsonian Channel, they have a series called Air Crash Disasters. And one of the one on 255 is called Cockpit Chaos. And that's the one I was also in. So people watch that. They'll see it on Smithsonian. I get Googled, and then I get an email, or people Google me and hit me up on social media and ask me if I was the guy or stuff like that. So, and then, like I said, every prominent year, or I had there was a plane wreck, I think, in Kentucky in the woods, and somehow News 4 fed through that news, and I had to go to a studio here because they wanted my opinion on why this person survived in the woods. It's like, I have no clue, but it is weird on some of the requests you get. But yeah, usually, like I said, the more even years, like every 5 years is when the news here covers it pretty good. You'll see a snippet. If a news team happens to come to the memorial, I'll get interviewed because, the family will say, hey, that's the guy right there that, found the girl. Most of the time I'll try to stay out of the limelight. It don't bother me. I work here still. And every time I drive by that site, I see it, how it was that night. I can see all the wreckage and how it was. But it don't bother me anymore. It was just part of my career.
What about national requests? Do you get some of those at all?
I'm sorry?
National requests.
Yeah, I got a call not too long ago for CNN to see if I would do a story this year. So they're supposed to get back with me. Yeah.
Very good. So go ahead, Mark.
I just got one more quick one, John. And when we had 9/11 here, where those planes went in the buildings and everything, did you ever sit back and reflect and see if fellow firefighters run in that building and say, God, if that happened in my neck of the woods, do you ever put yourself and look at, man, what a situation that was, and seeing the plane crashes in your own backyard?
I was actually working that day, and it was kind of weird to be working in a city that is full of airplanes every 3 seconds. One was coming behind the fire station, and they weren't there. Ironically, I was deployed to 9/11, 11 days after 9/11, because I was on the FEMA team also. So my 2 hours after 9/11, my team commander called and said, hey, get your affairs in order. We're going to go in and relieve some of the workers in like 9 to 10 days. So we went out to Selfridge, where we were coming out of. Our FEMA was based out there in a hangar. So, I ended up going to ground zero and for like 16 days. So I worked ground zero, I worked the morgue and the medical stations, and we relieved a lot of the crews that came in. And it was so surreal then, when I landed in New York and we went to this local community college by the ground zero, it was like, have you guys ever seen the movie Pleasantville?
No.
With Jeff Daniels, where it's like set in the 50s and everybody's set in their ways and it turns into color. And this how it was. It was like black and white in color. It was like gray. It was like really bright and everything. And you stepped over one line, it was like gray, like from all the ash and everything like that. It was like so weird. It was like walking into like a 1950s TV show. And I'd never seen 9/11. I'd never seen Ground Zero. And to know there's like 8 or 9 buildings that actually fell, like a Marriott hotel. I think Mayor Giuliano had an office building there. There was all these other buildings that were destroyed, and it was a whole 2-block area. And about 10 days after Ground Zero, where I have a picture of us at Ground Zero, the team, and that was probably about 40 feet of ash. And now they already cleared that part out. It was just how fast they were working. But I just remember talking with the New York guys and stuff they went through, and I said, wow, it's pretty, I couldn't imagine what they went through. I've been on some chaotic scenes too, and I'm sure they would probably say, oh yeah, I don't know how you do a plane wreck and stuff,
Really.
And, it's just, I think, I think it goes back to probably how you're trained, those guys, you get good officers. And, I think George's son-in-law, he's a firefighter, and, you get, if you get good guys who train you, and that's how my career is. I never wanted to be a firefighter. I was going to be a star broadcaster. And, I was waiting to be a fireman. My good friend, her dad was a captain, the guy who trained me. And every night, I'd work this side job. I'd go over there and we'd sit on her porch and talk with him, and we'd hang out all night long. And one day he said, son, he goes, while you're waiting to be famous, he goes, why don't you go down and put your application in the fire department and get off my porch? I'm going, okay. So it was a job. It was easy. It's not like today, I got hired in like 3 weeks. And then I said, hey, this is pretty cool, and you only working, 9 days a month and, 24-hour shifts, and you can't beat this. I can still do another career. And then, then I just did firefighting. And then back in the 90s, I got in Second City Theater in Hockeytown and started my acting and my sports stuff again. And I said, hey, I went back to school and did all that stuff. So,
all right. Well,
I've been blessed with having 2 cool, entertainment and firefighting, because I'll be retiring this job soon and I can do more sports and everything.
Well, you know what? Okay, let me go ahead and segue very nicely, Mr. Broadcaster.
There we go.
I will segue very nicely. Thank you. You talk about setting me up, Mr. Thiede. You definitely did it here, my friend. So, all right. Now that we got all the other stuff out of the way, and believe me, I'm glad that we had an address to talk about, the opportunity to talk about Cecelia and what occurred 35 years ago. I'm glad that we're leading with that. But now we're going to have a little bit of a lighthearted conversation, although maybe it may not be a lighthearted conversation. But first of all, how did you get into sports media? And then after you answer that question, we'll talk a couple of Tiger topics. How's that?
Well, after I was doing the acting and everything like that, I got lucky and got on the show at WPON next to Ron Cameron. And I remember watching Ron Cameron. And so we were doing a radio show at WPON, and we were doing the 5 o'clock drive. And there's like 3 of us. And one day this guy, probably about a couple of years we were in, and if you guys are familiar with WPON, like the area they served was like 696 and M14 and up in that like Walled Lake area and all that. So this guy called the studio while we were talking sports, talked to our sound engineer, and he goes, hey, the sound engineer says, you want to talk sports with the guys? He goes, no, not really. And he says, well, what do you need? And, long story short, he worked for Comcast. He was a producer. He would listen to the show on his way home. And he said, hey, I just want to talk to the guys about maybe putting their show on TV. And so we took his number. And, I called him and he goes, hey, I listened to you guys and you guys are funny. You talk sports. And, did you want to be on like Comcast? We got that sports network. And I said, not really. I said, when you're doing radio, people think you're so smart because, they can't see your laptop. They can't see you read the paper. Someone could call in on the phone. We'd have callers. They'd talk about the Tigers and you could spit out the next home runs, how this guy has just like that. I said on TV, people are going to have to see me, and, I had that face for radio. And so, we met the guy for lunch. Long story short, we met the guy for lunch. He said, give us a show. So we thought about it. I knew this guy who did camera work. So basically, we filmed the show. We gave it to Comcast. They looked at it and said, no, this is not what we want. We don't want 3 guys sitting talking sports at a desk. And we said, well, that's what we do on the radio. And he goes, yeah, but you guys are funny and stuff like that. But here we don't see that. So we said, well, give us another shot. So we went down to Florida. We had a sponsor. We talked to this lady who owned a business. She gave us like $1,000. We bought a cool camera. We went down to Florida. We filmed a spring training show. We got credentials with the Tigers. We did a spring training show. We added a little bit of humor in it because I did Second City Theater and I'm an improv comic. So we put some jokes in it, got some interviews. We did Fan on the Street, came back, sent it in, and they go, that's what we want. We said, so, do you want to do a weekly show, bi-weekly, monthly? And so then we signed that contract with Comcast like in 2011. So that's how we got on Comcast. And then they gave us the airtime, which was cool. We didn't have to pay for airtime. And we filmed at their studio. And then after the contract was 2 years, we had all creative control. So that was nice that we could go out of there. They said, here's what we want on the show. Here's what you have to give us. And then after 2 years, you do what you want. We still give you the airtime. So that's kind of how, in a nutshell, that started.
All right, so let me go over a couple things briefly here. All right, number one, I got my start with George Eichhorn, 1979 WXYZ Sports Talk with Ron Cameron. Okay, we'll just put that out there. But since you are the guest tonight, okay, John, and Mark and I and George will try to implement if we have time, because I want to make sure we're time sensitive. Okay, let's talk about the Tigers.
Well, and I will say, like, when I really got big in sports is when I met George with the DBSA, when Dennis Davidson got me to join the DSBA, and that was a great thing. I met George, and that was just a great
Thank you.
group back then.
Well, that's how I met you, John. Is through the DSBA as well. So Detroit Sports Broadcaster Association, now Detroit Sports Media has enabled me. When I lived in the area, I was really more of a member because obviously I was able to go to more of the events. Now being away from Florida, it's harder for me to attend events. Maybe if I'm lucky, I go to the Christmas party. So.
And I always tell George we should start it back.
Well, it'd be maybe when I get back to Michigan, it'll be great. By the way, speaking of Michigan, Fire Up Michigan, my name is Scott Morganoff, Motor City Madmouth, very appropriate for this show, anyways. With Madman Mancini, who is a chameleon, he fits in, and he's part of the Guinness Book of World Records for most podcasts on the planet. No, a boy, it seems that way, anyway. John Thiede, our hero, and George Eichhorn. Well, what can I say, George? We have a history. So, with that said, okay. We'll talk about the Tigers real quick. Want to be very time sensitive. Get a couple. So we're going to throw it at you, John, and Mark and George. We have time. I'll turn to you. So at what point does Al Avila become accountable for the Tigers situation? Fourth place, 11 games back, 26 up, 40 down.
I think probably last year. I think they've been trying to rebuild for 5 years now, and I think he's had he inherited a winning franchise, really, when you think about it. Right? When he came in. And I think he's probably getting beat up for a lot of the acquisitions he's made, the trades. And, you get, when you get rid of Verlander and J.D. Martinez and some of these guys, I think you got in for Martinez aren't even in our system anymore. And some guys like Verlander, I probably think the patience probably has run out, especially the fans. AJ Hinch, I don't put the blame on AJ Hinch at all. I think he's actually doing a good job with these guys. I think probably Avila, if he don't go this year, I'd probably say they can't hold on to it much longer.
Right, and I agree with you. I don't think AJ Hinch is at all responsible. I think he's doing the best he can with the cards. So as the old Bill Parcells, AJ Hinch didn't shop for the groceries. This is what he has. So, all right. So let's go on to Miguel Cabrera. At least during the down season, the milestones are certainly keeping people engaged as well. So give me your thoughts about Miguel Cabrera, obviously, in terms of what it's been like, being able to get to the 503,000 club.
I think it's exciting. Like I said, I was there Saturday as a fan, and to watch, him get 2 hits and then moving up the hits. And I think I told the guys I was with, I go, he'll probably maybe another good year or two here, maybe if he stays healthy, and we'll see him maybe get maybe another 50 to 100 hits maybe, and, reach another 4 or 5, 6 players he'll pass up. I think that probably was exciting, even though the fans are still going crazy every time he gets an RBI or a hit right now. But, I think he's only sitting on 3 home runs this year. And, he's only had 35 home runs in the last, 5 years, maybe. He's really gone down.
Yeah. He's been hit by a lot of injuries. So, as well. So,
And when you look at the whole staff, I think like Candelario, 5 home runs, there's just no production of home runs on this team. And I know Robbie Grossman was talking the other day about how much he hates Comerica Park because of that, and when he was with the A's, he didn't like to play here because of the home run effect that it's just a big open stadium.
Well, don't get me started with Juan Gonzalez, a guy I used to work with in 1987. to the Gastonia Rangers, who turned down a lucrative contract to stay in Detroit because he didn't want to play there either.
Yeah.
And at that time, the fence were further back. So, yeah, well, I give it to Mickey. He's been a trooper. His 503,000 numbers are getting him to the Hall of Fame, the Triple Crown, and all that. So, and then one other thing I want to mention: Lou Whittaker, his number finally being retired. Whether he gets in the Hall of Fame will be the debate. We have it for another show. But I do know that at long last, justice being due, with Lou finally having his number alongside Alan Trammell. Some observations on that.
Yeah, I think they still hold the probably most double plays, right?
Right.
Combo?
Yeah. Double play
So are you glad the Tigers are finally doing the right thing and retiring Lou Whittaker's number?
Yeah, I actually got to talk to Lou Whittaker right during the COVID hit. We were in spring training, and I think that was the year they were supposed to retire his number, and COVID hit. And I actually saw him in the stands at the Publix Field and interviewed him, and we talked about that. And just growing up watching those 84 Tigers was just amazing. And watching Lou Whittaker, and I the name escapes me, of the outfielder, they were playing the Yankees, and he wanted the outfielder's autograph on the ball. Lou Whittaker did on the Yankees. And the Yankee guy didn't even know who Lou Whittaker was. And it was so funny because Lou asked me, he goes, "Do you have an ink pen?" And I said, "Yeah." And he told the guy, goes, "Hey, I'm Sweet Lou." And the outfielder for the Yankees says, "Yeah, okay," like that. And I go, "Dude, he's kind of a big deal. This kid's probably 21 years old." I go, "This is like Sweet Lou Whittaker. He's going to have his, number retired." He goes, "Yeah, okay." And I'm thinking, it just clicked on me that how these ball players come up now and probably don't look at history of baseball.
Don't even get me going there. I'll never forget the time when I was over in Tampa, and I was talking to Mike Maroth and Troy Percival was in the dugout, and I asked Mike, "You ever heard of Mickey Lolich?" He said no, and then I went to Troy, and then Troy and I were talking. He got up there and said, "You don't know him." Don't even get me going there. So I know, Mark, you had a quick question. One thing I have to ask John while it's fresh in my head. So a lot of the athletes in town realize what you had done when you saved all those lives. Is there any credibility factor?
Well, believe it or not, I try to keep them separate. Like when I'm down on the field, I forget I'm a firefighter. And, I try to go down there and just be sports media and I don't even talk about that. So
that's
separate.
All right, Mark. So let me go to Mark and George.
I'm going to throw a quick question to you three guys. I want to know what the most impressive feat is in Detroit history. Is it the 25 years running of the Red Wings in the playoffs? Is it the Mark the Bird Fidrich? Or is it that 35-5 84 team who I got to see when they came into Anaheim?
Great question.
Well, that's a lot. You're throwing a lot at us at once, Mark. They're all important. They're all important things to Detroit sports fans. Okay, take them in, one by one. The Red Wings, 25 years in a row, which included 4 Stanley Cups, I believe. And Mark the Bird Fidrich was unbelievable. That Monday night game on national television. They used to love pitching him at home because they knew they would get 40 to 50,000 at Tiger Stadium. So don't tell me the Tigers didn't try to rearrange his schedule to try to see him at home as much as they could. And the 35-5 Sparky Anderson you're referring to, the World Series year of 1984. Yes, it was great. It was really a special team. But despite that, I'm still disappointed that neither the 1968 nor the 1984 teams could ever get back to the World Series again. Even if they would have won or lost, it wouldn't have mattered. But both those teams were great, and they never got there. And, of course, Mark the Bird Fidrich ended up way too young, wrecking his arm, and really wasn't much of a factor despite that 19-win season in 1976. John?
So, George, just choose one. I got 2 things I want to ask you. Right? Choose one, George. Which one? He gave you ABC. Okay, he didn't give you the opportunity to have a blank thing here and let it ride. Which one? Uno, dos, tres. That's all I know in Spanish, by the way.
Well, I'm going to go with the Red Wings because it was sustained over 25 years.
Okay. All right, John.
I've always just been a big Tiger nut. The 84 thing has always just amazed me. And, but you can even throw the back-to-back bad boys in there too. But the 84 Tigers were just it for me. And anytime I see those guys, even though it's hard to listen to them doing broadcasting, when I had a chance to interview Dave Bergman and Dan Petrie on the show, and it was just Alan Trammell, it was just amazing to me, So I have to go back to the 84 guys.
All right, so I'll go with the Red Wings 25 years.
Yeah.
All right, Mark and George, these are brief questions for you. At what point, George, does Al Avila get the boot? Is he that he has to be accountable? Make it quick.
Well, I mean, Al got a tough situation, okay? Now, you can debate all you want to see if he was ready or not. I think he was ready to succeed Dave Dombrowski. But Dave Dombrowski had an open check from the late Mike Ilitch to get those free agents, much like Scotty Bowman had with Kenny Holland and getting all those Red Wing superstars. So Al Avila did what he was supposed to do. He had to build the farm system back up. He had to build in analytics. This team had nothing like that going for itself. And but I agree with you guys. My patience has run out. The string, the jig is up, as they say. They went into this spring training telling us that they could contend for the playoffs. And they're so far out of it right now, it'd be an unbelievable miracle if they could resume. So I would let him continue one more year, but if they can't end this year on a high note, bye-bye, Al. Sayonara.
Yeah, all I'll say about the thing is he'll be gone by 2023. Mark, do you want to chime in on Al Avila before I ask you about AJ?
Well, I think the problem there is, I love AJ Hinch, like John was saying. I thought he did wonders with Houston there. I thought he turned this team around faster. Hey, guys, the division's for the taking, and Minnesota's stumbling of late. The White Sox haven't quite figured it out. And here's Cleveland out of, I was surprised Cleveland was in the thick of things. They've won 6 straight series. They just took 2 out of 3 out here in Los Angeles. But, if you're not producing, if you're not progressing and you're regressing, that's a big thing. So I don't know how long you'll last. But, guys, I'll throw you this question. I think baseball needs geography as far as the small markets need to be looped together. I mean, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Cleveland, Toronto, probably put them in one division so people can travel. We're breaking away from this thing, and we're marketing 4 or 5 teams in baseball. We need to get everybody involved in it.
All right, but Mark, my question wasn't that, okay? So I'm going to give it to you again.
Yeah, I said by next year.
I don't worry. I got plenty of real estate to talk about that another day. So how long do you think Al Avila survives, Mark? 1 or 2
I think
years?
by next year he's gone. I mean,
By 2023.
Yeah.
Okay. And AJ Hinch, you already reiterated that you feel like he'll get a little longer leash, I would think, as he should.
Yeah, he should. I mean, to get it. But I'm a little disappointed that he turned Houston around a lot quicker than he's trying to turn Detroit around. And, I don't know what the contract is in Detroit, but maybe it's they got to get something in the second half here, or they're going to just tread water. They're adding an extra wild card to this thing. You got to do something.
Yeah. Well, I think his first year in Houston, he took him to a wild card, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, and then he won a World Series, 2 years after that? 2017?
So I think we can all agree on that AJ Hinch deserves a little bit more rope. And George, obviously, and Mark, obviously, Cabrera. I guess everybody knows that the area is re-energized because of what Miggy's done, right? Mark?
Well, he's, you guys, the big elephant in the room is how much they're paying him. Okay, right. It's unbelievable, the millions of dollars he's making. So, I think it's good. He's hit these plateaus. So let's be honest, he would have hit these a long time ago had he not been injury prone. This stuff should have happened 2 or 3 years ago. 3,000 hits and 500 home runs. But to his defense, he has done well this year. He doesn't have much power anymore, but he's been a really good singles hitter. Mm-hmm. And a singles hitter of about 300 average. But he's been one of their most consistent hitters this year. So, I mean, if they, they're not going to trade him or anything like that. Nobody's going to want to pick him up in his huge salary. So
no, he'll finish here.
Yeah, he finishes this year, and then he's got 1 more year left. Don't forget, he's paid for next year too.
And if anything, if he's smart, he's a smart baseball player, and he can maybe pass some of that knowledge on. And I think he does that too. And that's something that is big that you need. Somebody that if you can pick up a tip from him, I guess it's probably big.
Yeah,
so, good points. Mark, thoughts about Miguel Cabrera, and we'll close it out with Lou Whittaker for George.
Show me another guy it's in your backyard. lifetime 300 hitter, 3,000 hits, 500 home runs. I mean, come on. I mean, the guy's done it all there. I mean, we'll never see this for quite a while. I mean, and he's a legend. And, you know, talking to guys around the league and everything. Yeah, you're right, John. People need to absorb it like a sponge and pick up that, you know, if I'm in that clubhouse, I'm absorbing everything and taking notes and trying to pick his brain to find out how I can succeed in that in that town. But yeah, that's a good point.
And like George said, you know, he's you know, I think if he's a DH every day, he should stay healthy. You know, if he can avoid playing first base and, you know, let Torkelson go out there. That's what you signed the guy for. You know, you let him get the moves at first if he's going to be the future out there. But, you know, if Mickey can DH and only have to bat 4 times, he might be able to, you know, play out that next year too. So,
you know, John, that's an excellent point. The fact that he should just be DHing and let Torkelson. I'm glad you brought that in. Mark, some observations quickly on Lou Whittaker.
Oh, Lou Whittaker and Alan Trammell, one of the best up the middle, man, there. And gosh, I mean, I think of the Tigers, I think of those guys and Willie Horton and Prince Fielder and all those guys, man. But I think maybe the second half, try to work a trade to get Verlander and Scherzer back into Motown.
Yeah, right, okay. But I guess, Mark, what I'm telling you is it's more appropriate that at least Lou Whittaker is finally getting his retirement. Retired.
Yes, it's very well earned and very well deserved. And like you said earlier, John, they were going to do it a couple of years ago, then it got backpedaled. But Lou is well deserving of it. And you know, Tigers had this crazy policy: unless your number was retired, or your name is Willie Horton, then you don't get your number retired. It was a stupid policy. Yeah. So it's long overdue for Lou Whittaker.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he deserves to be in there. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, a lot of clubs have individual policies, and I can't say I necessarily agree with them as well. So I know we covered a lot of ground tonight, and we touched a lot of bases. Maybe there's a little pun intended there. So what I'm going to do now, this portion of the show, is give everybody an opportunity to identify themselves. Before you guys do it, though, let me just go ahead and point out some promotional things for us. Subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. And then you'll be able to get everything that we've got to offer you. Go to our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. You can follow us on Twitter at Tribune South. To advertise, call 954-304-4941. The audio portion of the show obviously can be heard on, we have Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We all know how big Google is, John. You definitely are, when they Google your name, they're going to find you. So with that said, I'll segue to you first of all, John. Why don't you let everybody know how they can get a hold of you and what shows that you're a part of?
Right now my email is sportstalk60 at comcast.net if you want to reach out for the sports show. On social media, you know, I do a lot of acting in the sports stuff, so I'm on Instagram, obviously, and Facebook, but a lot of Instagram as I do for the sports show, my acting. I'm actually on a ghost hunting show right now called The Paranormalist, so we're back into that. I'm still trying to do some acting and into the sports stuff too. So, well, we're stay busy. Anything I can do.
We're just glad that you were able to take some of your evening tonight and join us. Sorry, George. Why don't you go ahead and
Tampa's up 6-2, by the way.
What's that?
Tampa's up 6-2.
Guess they were mad after losing 7-0. Yeah. Very mad. All right, George.
Yeah, you can reach me at gicorn@yahoo.com or on Twitter at SNGSports99. My book is available, Detroit Sports Broadcasters on the Air by Arcadia Press, and that's available at the South Florida Tribune website. And it features a guy named Scott. Yeah, Scott Morganroth. You're in my book. And John, I'm sorry you were a little.
I think I've read it.
You were a late bloomer, John, so you didn't make the book.
I think I have an autographed copy, though.
I hope so. Everybody should have one.
I do.
Yeah, I'm there with Muhammad Ali and Jimmy Connors, and it shows you a real big tennis
name dropper.
Right. But you know what? Hey, I'm just pleased to be in the book, and I'm glad I get to promote it on all the platforms that we have.
And if I could say that's probably been the biggest part of my childhood growing up is listen to, like, when I got in the media, like to see guys like Ron Cameron and George, and, you know, the days of me sitting in the yard with my dad in chairs listening to Ernie Harwell and Paul Carey. Nothing beats that. You know,
Ernie Harwell was like an uncle to me. Whenever I needed him, I had his phone number he'd call. So
I missed the old time sports stuff. How everything was AM and you just listened. Everything sports media guys was what it was.
So. No, John, I couldn't agree with you more, man. And I'm just so thrilled that you came here to join us. All right, Madman Mancini. Otherwise, we're going to rename him Guinness Book of World Records Mancini because he's on every podcast. So it almost seems, anyways. But I am Mark and I are partners, though, John, on Fire Up Wisconsin, Fire Up Florida, Fire Up Michigan, as well as a lot of other things that he has me come on. And Mark and I have some ambitious plans for growing with the network as well. With that said, I will turn it over to Madman Mancini. And think about this: Motor City Madmouth and Madman Mancini. You got a lot of anger there with those names. Go ahead.
On Mondays. I mean, you're rolling on Mondays.
We roll every day, man. Don't even go there.
You can reach me, mancinisports@yahoo.com, XM203, Sirius 217, Philadelphia's WWDB AM 860 Talk. And twice a week, I'm doing that Pittsburgh Pirate podcast with the first base coach, Derek Brock. It's just a blessing. I think I'll find myself in Pittsburgh next year, keeping my fingers crossed. Only the man above will open up that door. Well, and doing all these shows with you guys, man.
Hey, listen,
shows sweeping the country.
Yeah, we are sweeping. We do an awful lot of stuff. I'm really proud of where Wisconsin's going to go and what Florida's doing in Michigan, as well as other ones that will notate down the road. But in addition, though, just so you guys know that I've been with Mark on the Philadelphia show. We do one with Bruce Kessinger, the Philadelphia show. You have some good people there with Sal Tartaglia, as well as Marianne Costello, and of course Lou Landers, who works the baseball show. So then I mentioned Bruce Kessinger, and then of course Peter Blake, as well as all the other ones we got. So we're definitely involved in a lot of things together. So, but meanwhile, once again, folks, Fire Up Florida. Glad to be fired up with George Eichhorn, John Thiede, our hero tonight, and a lot of people's hero. And Madman Mancini, my crazy brother from another mother, a.k.a. my partner in crime on a lot of ventures. But hope you've enjoyed this high energy, high information, inspirational show tonight. As once again, John, I can't thank you for being on.
Appreciate it. I'm honored to be with you guys.
I mean, you're a hero in a lot of people's eyes. And if people have an opportunity to watch or listen to it, then they'll be wise to subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel and go to the other places that I aforementioned as well. So meanwhile, on that note, on behalf of George Eichhorn, John Thiede, and Madman Mark Mancini, my name is Scott Morgan, Roth, the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Fire Up Michigan. Until the next time, good night, everybody. And thank you very much for joining us because, as I said before, this show has been in the works for a while. I'm just glad that we were able to finally get it done so that you guys can enjoy an episode for an event that took 35 years, that happened 35 years ago. And John's here to tell the story and what it's all about. Good night, everybody.
Good night.